So you're about to discover that the secret to getting what you want, is it luck or is it by design? And I'm going to suggest to you it's by design. And so I'm going to leave you with, and what I promise you over the next half hour, is that you're going to leave with a clear understanding of the 3 things that you need to do in order to get what you want. And I'm going to share my story as a way to show you how I kind of came about these things and how I discovered these things for myself. So my dad grew up, this is a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge. My dad grew up in Bushwick, Brooklyn, in a cold water flat in severe poverty. And my dad went to a high school, an automotive high school, because his mother forgot to sign him up for the regular high school, and that's all he could get into. So he goes to this automotive high school, and by the way, my father hated to get his hands dirty, so it was really not a very good place for him. So the day he gets out of high school, he immediately enlists in the Army. And he gets to the Army, and he's like, he said, wow, the food was great. That's how you know he grew up poor. He thought the food in the Army was amazing. And so he went on from enlisting in the Army to becoming the youngest sergeant ever at the time. He went on, he left the Army, he went into the information technology field. It was just getting going. And he went on to design data centers from some of the largest corporations in the world. And he was an executive, except he never got his college degree. So like many of us have experienced the glass ceiling in one way or another, my father's glass ceiling was the fact that he didn't have a degree. So unfortunately for me, we moved a lot. Because when my father hit the ceiling of a job, he went out and found somebody who would hire him, not because they didn't care whether he had a degree, but because they needed what he knew how to do, and they knew he knew how to do it. So every time that he hit his ceiling, I moved. So I can tell you how many ceilings he hit, right? So you can imagine that the day I graduated from college was a really big deal for my family. And I was the first person in my family to graduate. It's kind of exciting. My daughter's going off to college, and she leaves next week. And so I went to college, I graduated, and I got off on a very fast track to success. I went to work, my first job out of college was with Prudential. I got promoted twice as fast as everybody else. I got great raises. I was doing amazing. Except for as I got farther and farther in, I realized that while I was good at what I didn't love what I did. And I wanted to do something that I really cared about. I loved working, but I wanted to do something that really made a difference for other people. And so I decided to take a buyout from my company. And, I had a choice point. I could go take another job in the company, or I could accept a buyout and I could go off on my own. So I did. So I left my job. I didn't have another job. I thought my father was going to have a heart attack, right? But I knew that I wanted to do something in the area of organizational change, transformation. That I had working with with technology systems for all those years, following my father's footsteps. But I was more passionate about the people. I wanted to work with the human system. So I just made a bet on myself, and I took a leap. And I found my way to a company that was willing to hire me, and I was excited. My career had gone great until this point, so I had confidence that it would go great now. Except I was wrong. That next year was the toughest year of my career. And I get to the end of the first year, and I go to a performance review. And the guy, his name was Tony, who was giving me a performance review. He was a former Navy SEAL. He was kind of intimidating. And he sat on the other side of the table, and I'll never forget the smell of the leather in the chairs. You know how like those moments you have like are emblazoned in your memory? And he looked right at me, and he said, "Susan, you're failing." And you know what I heard when he said that? I am a failure. And it was like being punched in the stomach. And so I had gone on this fast path to success. I'd never really failed before. I didn't even know what to do with that. And so I went on for the next 2 years. The only thing I needed to do was to prove he was wrong. Has anybody ever had that? Somebody tells you you can't do something and you work your tail off to prove it, right? Well, that's what I did. So for the next 2 years, I worked harder than I've ever worked in my life. And I turned things around, and I had great employee performance reviews, and I also had even better, great feedback from my clients. And I did some of the best work of my life. Except for the company I went to work for, the raison d'etre was unleashing the human spirit at work. There was a problem. My spirit was not unleashed. So I made a choice to leave that company, again with no job. My dad was kind of getting used to this by now. And I decided that I was going to figure out a way to work with people so that the kind of leadership that sucks the life out of people didn't stand a chance on my watch. That I was going to find a way to bring the heart back to leadership. The kind of leadership I learned from my dad my whole life, I was going to figure out a way to teach that to other people. But I first had to figure out what was it that I had to say about leadership. Which leads me to the first step in the secret to getting what you want. And that's to know what you want. And sometimes the hardest question to answer for ourselves is, what do I want? And one of the things I want to suggest to you is that, but it's a worthwhile question to do the work to answer. And it is not an easy question to answer, but it's worth doing the work. You know, Mandy shared before that, like getting what you want really isn't the holy grail. It's not the be-all, end-all. It's who you become in the process. But I'll suggest to you that knowing what you want sets the point on the horizon that you move towards. It informs the things you do now. It gives you something to move towards and aspire to. So for that purpose, it's invaluable. So I tend to like to do things the hard way. So 2 weeks after I decided I resigned from my company, turned in my resignation letter, I found out I was pregnant. So I was giving birth to a baby and a business at the same time. So for the next few years, though, things went remarkably well. You know, once I was clear about what I wanted and what I wanted to do, all manner and form of things happened, like seemingly serendipities. You know, I said before, is success and getting what you want by luck or design? I think if you design what you want, the luck starts to follow, and that's certainly what started to happen for me. Except about 3 years in, I woke up one morning in a hospital bed at Sebastian River Medical Center. And I could barely lift my head off the pillow. It was Christmas morning, and my 3-year-old daughter was at home wondering where Mom was. So I realized that while I had defined what I wanted professionally, I had been working so hard trying to be a great mom and trying to run this business and get things off the ground. I exhausted myself in the process. And you know, there's nothing like a trip to the hospital and being stuck in a hospital bed where you can't move for you to actually get some clarity. And I'll suggest to you that clarity is power. Because it was in that moment where I just kind of couldn't do anything, or I started to think, all right, so I knew what I wanted to do for a living, but what do I want my life to look like? I hadn't really given much thought. I'd kind of just gone on the rat race. And so I had to really think about what kind of mom I wanted to be. And, you know, my husband hated his work. And that was incongruence with everything that I believed in, that my husband went to a business every day that he hated. So we made a decision as a family to move to Florida in 2004. In January, we made that decision. In June, we were living here. Now, the interesting thing about that was at the time, people said, you're crazy. Like most of what we got from people was not encouragement. They told us how crazy we were and that it wasn't worth the risk and that it was a dumb thing to do. And that's when I learned this next important thing of the secret to getting what you want. You have to own what you want. Right? So I had to know what I wanted. My husband and I had to know what we wanted for ourselves and for our family and for our future. So you have to own what you want. And you have to take a stand for it. And you can't listen to all the voices out there because what you want is going to look different than what everybody else thinks you should want. So you really have to own what you want. The interesting thing is, though, after we'd been settled in Florida for a few years, all those same people who told us we were crazy were like, you're so lucky. So, and one of the things that happens when you own what you want is the things that are going to help you succeed show up. And sometimes they show up in unlikely places. And for me, It was the death of my dad. So in 2006, my father got diagnosed and died from cancer very quickly, like 4 months. And he was always my rock, my inspiration, my mentor, and I didn't know what I was going to do without him. And in his estate book, he left a poem by Robert Noel Tess titled "To Remember Me." And it said, "If by chance you wish to remember me, do so with a kind word or deed for someone who needs you. If you do all that I ask, I will live forever." And it gave me an idea. So we did a memorial service for my dad. We called it Jim's Ripples. And we went around committing random acts of kindness in his memory. And in the process, I discovered there was this whole movement called Random Acts of Kindness. And as I started to commit my own random acts of kindness, I started to think, what if committing an act of leadership could be as simple as committing an act of kindness? What if I could make leadership that simple? What difference might that make in the world? How many people, what people might do, and how they might elevate themselves and the difference they make if I could make leadership that simple? So that was that idea back in 2006. And then a few months after my dad passed away, Don Miller-Crumani, who at the time was who started the Women's Business Center and was the executive director, asked me to come speak. And so I was like, what am I going to speak about? She goes, I don't know, you'll figure it out. Now, until this point, I'd spoken inside of corporations, but I didn't see myself as a speaker. And she hounded me for the better part of a year until she finally said, okay, pick a date, this one or this one. Didn't give me a choice. So I came to speak, and in the process, I developed my whole leadership methodology based on random acts of leadership. And who would have thought that it would have come from such a sad day? But my dad, even in passing, left me such a great gift. And then and things were going great. My business was doing phenomenal. I was having fun. I'd gotten healthy. I was well. I was enjoying being a mom. We downsized our life here. A lot of things were going good. And then the bottom fell out of the market. And I watched a 6-figure income disappear practically overnight. And not only that, not only did the work dry up, but there really wasn't a whole lot of work for me to go get. And that's when I was faced with the third step in the secret to getting what you want. And that is to choose what you want. So in that moment, I could have gone out and tried to find another job, and there's a lot of things I could have done. But I knew I was onto something with Random Acts of Leadership, and I took the time. I started a blog. And listen, there was nobody hiring me at the time. I had nothing else to do. So I started writing. So I started a blog. And in a 2-year period, I went from being unknown in the world of leadership to being one of the top 100 bloggers in the world in leadership. And that was just from sitting in my house, typing on a computer, and it had me discover that what I had to say about leadership really resonated with people. So it's important to know that when you can know what you want, you can own what you want, but you have to constantly choose, make choices each and every day to realize what you want. So out of all of that process, the Leading and Action System, my signature leadership program, was formed. And it's kind of exciting that I'm here with you today because the very first big speaking engagement I did was actually at the very first Impact Summit. And I'm not sure exactly how many years ago it was, but that was the first time I was ever on a stage speaking as a keynote, doing that kind of thing. And I'm so grateful to the Women's Business Center for WeVenture for giving me all the opportunities and for cheering me along the way. This is an amazing organization. And next week, I'm headed to deliver my leadership program to the U.S. Navy. And I'm so excited. Thank you. I'm so excited because one of the things I set out to do was find what I uniquely had to say about leadership and put something out in the world about leadership that was somehow different. And if you Google the leadership on Amazon, on Google, you'll find there's a whole lot of responses to that, right? So it's a big talked about topic. And the Navy has determined that I am a sole source provider, which means I don't have to go through the RFP process, that what I have is unique enough that they can hire me directly, which was pretty darn exciting for me. So, all of that came from knowing what I wanted, choosing what I wanted, owning what I wanted, and choosing what I wanted. But this next thing that I want to talk to you about is perhaps the most important thing I learned through my whole journey. And it's this. It has to do with our relationship with the future. So if I were to ask you, what has more impact on our current moment right now? The future or the past? Which one has more impact on the moment we're in right now? So raise your hand if you say the past. Okay? And raise your hand if you say the future. Okay. Well, that's really interesting because there are more people who raise their hand with the response of the future than I've ever seen. So you guys are already way ahead of the game. I'm going to suggest that's the future. You know, if I were to say that 2 years from now, $5 million was going to be deposited in your bank account, guaranteed, would that change your experience of the present moment? Would it change the choices that you make? Would you still be doing the same thing you're doing now, or would you be doing something different? I'm going to suggest to you that if that was a guarantee, it would change your present moment. Now, all the things that happened to you in the past, of course, they inform who you are today. But ultimately, what drives you right now is your future. But a lot of times what happens is what gets stuck in our future is the past. It's like same thing, different day. We wake up every morning and we think, well, what's today going to be like? Well, it's going to look a lot like yesterday, right? And the thing that's going to have you make different choices in your life is having a future to live into. And that's what defining what you want and why it matters so much is you have to define what you want and you have to own what you want in order to every day choose and make choices for what you want. You know, when the bottom fell out of the market, there's a lot of choices I could make, but I chose to just leap forward, right? And start writing and start inventing because I didn't see anything else to do at that time. When I woke up in that hospital room, I knew I started to define anyway the kind of life I wanted, and I got pretty clear that how I wanted it to look. I wanted to have energy. I wanted to be well. I wanted to have my husband to have a job he loved, right? That was the future I started to live into, and that was the basis for the decisions that I make. So I ask you, do you have a future that you're living into that's going to pull you forward? Because let's face it, you know, when you're born, right? Everybody was born? Just checking, okay? Now, one of the first milestones, right, is learning to walk. Now, when you're learning to walk and you fall down, what does that mean? Absolutely nothing. Get up and try again. Today, you fall down, you fail. Like when I had that performance review and he told me I was failing. What does it mean when you fall down? That you're a failure. And we resist those things, right? But I'm going to suggest to you that if when you're that 2-year-old and you're looking out, the holy grail for you in that moment, the future that you're living into is walking. You don't care how many times you skin your knees. You don't care how many times you fall down. You are going to figure out how to walk. And I'm going to suggest that defining what you want and owning what you want is just like that holy grail of walking to the 2-year-old. It's a future for you to live into. And when you define that future crystal clear for yourself, you have the pathway to getting what you want. Now, know that other people aren't necessarily going to want for you what you want for you. And I've heard it said, share your dreams often, but only with people who support them. Because it's true, not everybody in our life is going to support us in having our dreams. Sometimes our moving ahead means leaving them behind. Or it means changing something in their world, even if we're excited about the change. So find people, the women in this room, the women at We Venture, those are the kind of people to be talking to about your dreams. So talk about them often. Take the time to get clear about what you want. Now, I like this. I had a friend a long time ago who said, I was a 5-year overnight success. I think maybe I'm more like a 10, 15-year overnight success, right? So there's the tortoise and the hare. I've been kind of like the tortoise. I've just kind of moved inch by inch along the way. But it doesn't really matter how fast you get there. For me, it's been about the experience of continuing to make progress on the things that I really care about, the things that matter most to me, that has made the journey really worthwhile. So you don't have to always make big, bold moves. Sometimes it's just the small thing that you do. You know, I was talking, Erica, can I share? Erica, you out there? Can I share what we talked about a little bit ago? So Erica and I were talking just moments before I got on, and she has a talk she wants to give. And one of the suggestions I made to her was, she's been thinking about it for a very long time. I said, why don't you go out and find a place who that topic resonates with and offer to speak? And I promise you the rest will be history. Because how many of you have a hard time keeping promises to yourself? I know I do. So one of the strategies that I've used when I want to get off my butt is I make a promise to somebody else, because I will do whatever I need to do to keep that promise. So just make sure you're making promises that really are in your best interest too, right? So it's mutually beneficial. So, put those stakes in the ground, use your network, but make sure you're engaged with people who want more, want to be more, want to do more. And that's where you're going to get the source, and which is why I love having the opportunity to speak to this audience, and why I love have every opportunity I have to connect with this community. One of the touch points for me along the way, I'd been knocked down quite a few times, and Jeanette Cror is out there somewhere, and Jeanette is one of those people who picked me up, right, when I fell down. Because, at some point you fall down enough, you lose your confidence. At least that's what happened to me, right? Anybody suffer from a loss of confidence at times? Yeah. And Jeanette was one of those people who was having none of that. And so I participated in the Ignite 360 program. And one of the things I think was the most important thing that I got is I remembered who I was. So we need people, we need structures to help us to do that, right? So you can know what you want, you can own what you want, but part of choosing what you want is the actions you take, but it's also the people you invite in your life, and the people that you ask to help you, and the people that you surround yourself with. That's what's going to help you make the kind of choices that are going to give you the future that you want, because you say you want it, because you go get it. The heart of everything that I've talked about today is what I'll call being strategic. And I've talked about it in the context of, my professional journey, but really a personal life. It's knowing what you want. It's owning what you want, making it yours, and making sure you keep true to yourself. And it's choosing what you want every step of the way. But that's the foundation of being strategic in your life, right? You can be strategic in your business, but until you know what you want, it's hard to figure out where to go. It's hard to figure out where to go next. But it takes courage. The status quo is comfortable. The way things are is comfortable. No matter how good or bad it may be, it's comfortable. You don't need to define and create a new future for yourself because there's something wrong with where you are either, right? But don't you know that when you're going for something that you really care about, doesn't that give you something, some energy, some vibrance to your life? So by knowing and owning and choosing and having the courage to go for it, that's how you go get what you want. So my wish for you is that you decide what you want, that you take the time and you invest it to working on yourself and getting clear about what you want, whether it's for your personal life or for your business. And as I think it was Emily shared, there really isn't any difference, right? It's like all of it. Define what you want and go for it. And I promise you, you'll have a spring in your step. It'll lift you up. So your time is now. The time for you to take that next big, bold leap in your life is now. So go take it. Thank you.